Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Market Shapers. Very excited to be joined by Warren Sibley of Dave Perry Miller Lakewood. Warren, thanks for sitting down with us today.
No problem.
We're going to address the elephant in the room right from the start, which is we have a table. This show has been so wildly successful, and we have so many advertisers, we were able to buy this table. And so, Warren, I'm glad you were able to be the first one to actually sit at a table with me.
I'm honored.
Nice, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way I like to usually start these is just kind of going into a little bit about your background. And you have a really, really neat background I think it'll be interesting for other people to hear about, of kind of what you were doing into real estate and how it translates into it once you kind of decided to make the jump into this.
Mm-hmm. Well, my background is one of people. I was a minister for 15 years. And so I've lived in Dallas my whole life. Then I went into the ministry, and I really enjoyed the people part of what I did as a minister for 15 years.
And then the quote that you had that I thought was really, really neat was you said that even in real estate now, you still walk alongside people because that's kind of what you were doing in your ministry. And so what did that mean to you when you kind of thought, or when did it hit you that when you were in real estate, there was still an opportunity to serve and walk alongside people? Was it immediate, or was it something you kind of realized over time that there was still some of these parallels there?
It was certainly not immediate.
Yeah.
I got into real estate, I wouldn't say out of thin air, but I had my grandfather, both my grandfathers and my father, though they were professionals in other areas, all they had done was real estate, whether that was commercial or residential. So I kind of got in with that in mind,
right?
Not really knowing how was I going to use my license, and very quickly had people even say, like, you seem very comfortable.
This fits you.
This fits you, right?
Yeah.
And especially as a new agent, you're working with a lot of buyers, and so it's very easy to walk alongside them. And I just noticed, wow, I'm scratching that itch that I lamented leaving when I left the ministry. But in order to do what I apparently, and still to this day, really love doing, and that's helping people with really big decisions.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on that too in some of the bio stuff that you wrote about, is that like you're still kind of doing marriage counseling.
I definitely
just
feel like
in a different way. So you might kind of expand on that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, you very quickly, my wife is a physician, and one of the things that she talks about a lot with her patients is that we are the worst diagnosticians of ourselves. So you may come in complaining about one thing, when in reality it's something completely different that is actually the problem.
Right.
So quickly I have learned over the course of this decade plus, what are you really getting after? Like what do you want? You say you want a house here, you say you want this here, but what do you really want? What are you really looking for as a buyer or as a seller? What are you hoping to leave behind? What are you hoping to gain? And often if you can get them down the road to the answers to those questions, you actually have helped them and they didn't even know that they needed help in those areas.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we've all heard, like they come in saying they want this type of house, and what they end up with is totally different, and that's even taking it down to the emotional level as well.
Right,
too.
And that's where to your question, which was marriage counseling, you quickly see what the husband may want and is not saying, or what she doesn't want, or what she does want, or whatever, the kids want. What do the kids want? Or, there's thousands of things.
Yeah.
What does the single guy in Uptown want?
Right.
So you quickly figure out what people are looking for, and you have to help them help themselves.
Did you find that kind of radar, that internal sense that you have on that, did that kind of play back to also from your days when you were in the ministry, as far as someone would come to you with, a personal crisis in their life or some trouble they were having, and here's what they're saying, but here's what's really happening in the background a little bit? I mean, it seems like that skill set's kind of what came forward into real estate a little bit.
It is, because I think at first, when you get out of graduate school and going into probably any endeavor, but especially in the ministry, you have all of this knowledge, but you don't have this applied skill yet, and I found myself having to curtail the desire or the penchant to tell them. I needed to help them. It's the old adage of teaching them how to fish rather than fishing. I don't, because later you don't want them to have gotten into a situation where they've bought a house that that everything is not right, or they haven't realized that not everything is going to be perfect. And so really helping them identify those things, and I think that's a ministry crossover. Like if someone comes to me with a problem or came to me with a problem, I would be, well, really, let's together seek what is really the problem, or problems.
I wonder if that also ties into and it is a skill set. I mean, you don't think it would be for most of us humans, but the skill set of listening. I know a lot of folks when they're getting into real estate and they, are taking courses and they're reading stuff online or going to this guru or that guru. It's learn this script, memorize this, memorize that, but they don't talk about the listening aspect. And it seems like kind of what you're describing at its very basic core is just listening, right? Listening to what they're saying and then listening to what they're not maybe telling you as well too.
Right. I tell my clients, and I tell potential clients all the time, I say, we have to meet and we have to just talk. And I need to listen to you. I need to hear. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Right.
And we need to just talk without even you telling me I want a 4.2 or a 4.3 or none of that. Let's just talk.
Yeah.
So I can see, what are you doing? What is your career? Where are you going? That's very important.
Yeah.
In this process.
I think it's great. The other thing that's really in your blood, and it really comes through from the first time that you and I had the opportunity to sit down, and we had beers in front of us last time and stuff, but the coffee mugs will do for now, was East Dallas is just kind of in your blood. And so maybe talk a little bit about growing up there, how you've seen it change over the years, and why you've decided that is where you are raising your family now, and why it's such a special place to you.
Well, being a Dallas realtor, I've been asked, and I've sat on panels before where they said, give us the 5 things that you would do as a realtor. And I said, well, the number one thing I would do is be born in Highland Park, be raised in Highland Park, and live in Highland Park, because then that's where you would sell your real estate, right? But, and I say that, of course, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I was basically born and bred in East Dallas and then Lake Highlands. And again, coming back to your original question 5 questions ago, I didn't set out to be a Lake Highlands realtor, and I'm certainly not. I probably sell more outside of where I live than I do. But that is where you live, really this goes for every realtor.
Yeah.
Where you live is your primary sphere of influence. Why do I like East Dallas? I love it's laid back. I love it's right by the lake. I love the walkability, if you will say that. Dallas is not a walkable town, but if we can have some vestige of walkability, we have that to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I can walk to my gym. I can walk to the restaurants that I like. I'm not going outside of a mile if I don't have to for a special occasion. You can achieve that if you're strategic in East Dallas.
Yeah.
And it's only getting better. I mean, you ask any developer that's worth his salt, East Dallas is where it's happening, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So that's. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think that's great, and it comes across as that passion for it.
We call it EOC. We're east of Central.
East of Central.
And we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good.
So growing up there to what you see now, it's interesting you said it's getting better, because I think a lot of communities or areas of different cities talk about, oh, it's getting worse, right? It's this change is happening or that change happened. It's not what it used. And it seems to be like, it's neat to hear you say like it was great, and it's actually still even on the upswing a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful nowadays. We're much in a good way.
Yeah.
We are much more sensitive as communities and as a society. What are you displacing? If you're going to move in, if commerce, if retail is going to move in, how is that impacting your community? And I see the developers, I see the builders, at least giving tacit, if not true, full-fledged interest in the community that they're coming into, wanting to integrate as much as they can.
Yeah.
And as realtors, we want to take part in that and walk alongside the people that live there. And that's where I live and work.
Yeah, and I think that's neat. I think there is more of that social awareness from even from commercial developers to say like, it doesn't, what you put in this community may not work here, and that old, because in the past that really what it was, like we're going to put in this big box here and we're going to put in this thing here, and it seems like what's really, for me the last year going around all of North Texas to see is that there's a uniqueness to every little kind of corner, and certainly the East Dallas, Lakewood area, it all has that kind of, and the developers seem to be part of it, and I think maybe that's because they've listened to the realtors in that community, they've listened to the citizens of that community, and that partnership really matters.
That's right.
You mentioned being able to walk to the gym. I think it was one cool is it's your own gym.
Yes. When I say I'm walking to my gym.
Yeah, it's my gym. Yeah, capital M-Y.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how did that come about? Is it just kind of entrepreneur at heart a little bit, or?
No.
Yeah.
That came about originally because I wanted to work out for free. That's a misnomer. And honestly, I've always been involved in athletics and I've always been involved in fitness, but I did not reflect that in the way that I ate and in the way that I worked out. I started in the early 2000s to really shed the graduate school weight. I did so running. But anyway, at the end of the 2000s, there's a kind of a wave of a certain style of fitness that was more time sensitive, more impact sensitive, just really, more 2000s-y.
Yeah.
And so high intensity kind of just struck, it's more like adult PE. I really liked it. There was two other couples in the neighborhood that had already started it 2 months prior, and then just asked if I wanted to come be a part of it. And it just made sense.
Yeah.
And it's easy, and it's easy in the sense of it was an easy opportunity to get involved in.
Right.
Obviously, it comes with its own challenges.
Yeah. Do you find that, being a business owner, I mean, you have you're a business owner in your real estate business, but
Yes.
being a business owner in something different, you really are vested in your community. I'm curious how that kind of translates over into your real estate career as well, too. I mean, do you find some of the clients that are coming to your gym end up crossing over, or just the fact that they know that you're super invested in this community? Not only do I live here, but I have my other business in here, if that makes a difference a little bit.
It does.
Yeah.
And to speak to your East Dallas point,
Yeah.
being from there, especially Lake Highlands, Lakewood, East Dallas,
Yeah.
there is a very small town, Mayberry-ish feel, good and bad.
Yeah.
And so you need to make sure that what you're doing is contributing to your community. Definitely my gym is a part of contributing to my community. And I didn't do it at all to assist my real estate side of which is really my professional life,
Right.
the bulk of my professional life, but it absolutely has. I mean, without question, it has.
That's neat. I think it's just something really unique, and I can see how those two things kind of go together. The other thing that I wanted to chat a little bit about, because you had some really neat and kind of unique advice for agents who are thinking about getting real estate or those that are new. And I know a lot of our folks that are new to our brands, will watch this, and it was more of the way you phrase things as opposed to something new that maybe an agent hadn't thought about. But one of the things you talked about for a new agent is deciding about who you are. And just explain a little bit what you mean by that when you ask that question of somebody who's getting into this business when they have to decide who they are.
As we age,
Yeah.
you have different things that are happening to you emotionally and psychologically as you get older. Well, I got into this business in my 30s, and that is at the precipice of the 40s, which is that segment in my life, and it's certainly probably in the populace, in which you really start pressing the boundaries of and trying to figure out who are you. And that was coinciding with who is I as a businessman. And so I when I first got into the business, I went and I knocked on the doors of as many successful realtors as would talk to me and just say, what do you do? And I noticed that while you may be able to subscribe to certain books or seminars or gurus that will pretty much give you a formulaic idea of what it means to be or how they succeeded,
Right.
I noticed that all of these other people had very distinctive ways that they made an impact and grew a customer base. And so over the course of my first 3 or 4 years, I didn't know it, but what it eventually became was I needed to figure out who I was. Was I the guy that could walk around North Park Mall and shake hands and give out business cards? Well, no. Was I the guy that could write 20 note cards a day to my friends and family? Well, I think it was the second or third week of me doing that, one of my really good friends called and said, "This isn't you." And I thought that was a really awesome thing that he did because I felt it just wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I needed to figure out what was I trying to achieve? Like, is it that I need to make a certain amount? That I need to sell a certain amount? Or no, for me, coming from my ministerial background, I truly wanted to, and this isn't better than anything for anyone else, but
Right.
for me, my success and my satisfaction was honestly walking alongside of my clients, my friends, my family, and helping them make a very important and big decision.
Yeah.
And then not having them leave. What I noticed is those first 3 years, you'd sell a house and then you had to make an effort to kind of stay in their life. And so I figured out, how can I keep involved in their life? How can I help them? How can I not just lose them?
Yeah.
But I got to do it as a part of my vocation,
Yeah.
which was cool.
Well, and I think what it is that if you're doing something that feels not authentic to who you are, you won't be comfortable doing it, and you probably won't be very good at it.
Right.
And then that ends up being your excuse. Well, this career is not right for me.
Right.
As opposed to just being honest with yourself and saying this, like you said, it just doesn't feel right to me to be walking around handing out these cards. I'm not being authentic to myself.
But great people do it,
Yes.
and it's so authentic.
Yeah.
And I really came out of lament. I was like, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Like, why can't I? I was like, because it's not me. and that doesn't meet my goals.
Yeah.
Like my wife and I, when we set up, that's not meeting our success goals.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it. I
Yeah.
did something else.
The other thing you mentioned for people that are, and I think this works no matter what business you're getting into, but especially for real estate, is to really think about where you already have areas of influence in your life, because those are going to be people that already want to help and support you. But maybe talk a little bit about that. Is that something that you realize very quickly? I already have influence in these people's lives. That's where I should go first, and then maybe how new people can kind of think about that.
Well, now that is born out of, I think, every realtor worth their salt. They do some study and they do some research, and so out of any book you pick up, they'll start, your A, B's, and C's, and you put people in buckets. And so when I started to do that, I realized very quickly that the onus was on me to continue to and strive to be even better in those areas.
Yeah.
Because honestly, in that whole discovery process, I noticed that I am not going to be the one that is more out front asking you, who's your realtor? And so I had to work very much, in a kind of a harder, more personal way to really just continue to love people and trust that if they wanted to use me as their realtor, that they would. And if they didn't, they wouldn't. And I couldn't get hurt about that.
Yeah.
But I really needed to make sure I made very intentional efforts to just be me really out loud and hope that that's what would be successful for me.
Yeah.
And so far it has been.
Yeah, and I think that's a good exercise for anyone to kind of go through themselves. And it is a little self-examining. And I think what you talked about too, having to be good with, there'll be some that use me and that somewhat won't. And I can't dwell on that, because it could be, it's too painful sometimes, or why and all this, and start doubting yourself internally. And so just being okay with it. And that's it's great. The other thing that you touched on as well was defining what success looks like for you. And not maybe not just in business, but how does this life of being a real estate agent also equal success in my family life as well too? So how did you kind of work through that? Or over the years, how's that kind of manifested for you a little bit?
Right, that's an ongoing strive, because as I think if it's natural as you get older, you have children. I have children, I have teenagers, and I desperately want my daughter and my son to, when someone says, what does your dad do? Or when I'm, retired in Boca Raton, what do you remember about your father and your mother and your family life? And I want them to have reflected upon a very well-rounded familial life.
Yeah.
Yes, he would be gone at 7:30 at night to open up a house or to do such and such, or be gone at 5:30 in the morning, but he was also at my soccer games, and he was also a part of. So as I fill out my life, I just noticed that doesn't come easily. You can get really wrapped up in every single thing that you do. It's really easy to be busy, but are you busy in the right way? So I needed to be able to be busy in the right way. And so if I'm going to be on my church board, if I'm going to own a gym, if I'm going to be a realtor, if I'm going to be a husband, if I'm going to be a father, if I'm going to have hobbies, and they're going to all work within our familial life, which is really where you start, and it's going to benefit all of those areas, I have to be very intentional, especially because I'm a scatterbrained ADD, and so you have to be very intentional. And so over the course of those years to today and tomorrow, I'm constantly reevaluating my involvement and how I'm going about all areas of my life.
Well, I think it's a good lesson for all of us, because I know when we do business planning or goal planning, we're focused on typically one sliver of it, right? It's the, what do I want to do next year? How many houses do I want to sell? How am I going to do in this business? But then we don't hit those other columns of, family and faith and fitness, but they all do interconnect, and one goes out of sync and it impacts all the rest. And so I think the way you articulated it is probably the easiest I've ever heard it said, was just the idea that it's a constant evaluation, but they all interconnect, and you have to think about everything, because if family's out of sync, the chances of you being super successful in your finance and real estate career, it probably not going to happen. And then vice versa as well too. And so linking them all together is important. And so I would encourage everyone, as they're thinking through that, and especially this time of year when you're planning for the new year coming up, is that idea of like taking account every aspect of your life and how do they link in. If I'm going to be doing this in this area, then what is the impact over here? And so I think that's what really matters. And so I think that was excellent.
Yeah, because you could be, top 3 realtor in Dallas, but if you're empty in these other areas, back to the success point. Are you successful?
Yeah.
Is that success
Right.
for you?
Yeah.
You have to decide.
Yeah, I think it's great. Thank you for sitting down at a table as the first person to sit down at a table. It was great, and appreciate you joining us. I think this is going to be very well received, and just again, thanks for sharing your insights and knowledge with everybody, and congrats on all the success, and thanks for all you do for Dave Perry Miller and the Ebby Halliday Company.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of Market Shapers. You never know what props might show up next, and so appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.